Welcome, everybody, to the Synapse Philosophy Group. I'm your host, Dr. Haig John, and we are on D.D. Palmer's 1910 book, The Chiropractor's Adjuster. We're on page 497. We're in the chapter of innate. This is where we got a lot of our philosophy in the seminar. It's what we bring out of D.D. Palmer. It's the parts I love to read about D.D. Palmer, and I can't wait to get started. We've got, great group tonight. We got James Chester, Alan Lichter, Robert and Carol Crystal, Bob, Barry Hobbs, and we've got some other people, that come in and out. So I feel really excited about, getting back into this chapter. I want to start off and just say a couple of things. I just did an awesome podcast with Dr. Ed Cordero today, and we're going to be releasing that probably tomorrow or the day after, once we do a little editing. We had a great talk. We just did an amazing one with Dr. Simon Senzon, and he has just so much wisdom to share. And we have a lot of history we talked about in this one. So you guys are going to get a lot out of that. Let's start things right off here. And the way we do things, I'll just go through some of the rules. We don't have a lot of heavy rules, but what we do, everyone has a chance to speak. We're going to read some philosophy of D.D. Palmer out of the book. We stop and pause. If you want a little clarity, ask for it. We discuss it, because the philosophy is not set in stone. We see it with our own eyes. We read it with our own, hear it with our own ears, and smell it with our own nose, right? Because it is constantly evolving as we evolve and transform. So anyone has an opportunity to speak up at any time. Clear? Okay, we're going to start off. This is a great way to start this off. Dreams are involuntary combinations of confused ideas which present themselves to the mind during the period of sleep. A dream that would take hours for its real production is completed in an incredible short space of time. For example, a railroad engineer told me that on one occasion he was very much in need of sleep, and he passed the signal post. He blew the whistle for the crossing. He fell into a deep sleep and dreamed of being in a wreck, which would have taken an hour for its accomplishment. He awakened with his dream vividly on his mind, and realizing the time taken for the wreck, thought that he had passed the station, which was miles ahead. But to his surprise, he had not arrived at the crossing for which he had blown the whistle. Dreams arise of what is that word? Somnolence or renewed. What is this called?
Somnolence. Yeah.
Somnolence. We have to look that up. And renewed activity. Innate of the mother forms the embryo and develops the fetus. Okay. Now, why is he giving us that story? And then he comes up with innate. It's a one-line paragraph, one-sentence paragraph. The innate of the mother forms the embryo and develops the fetus. That's where we got to last week. BJ was, in a lot of his writings, he really talks about innate begins at birth, not at conception. So, and he's in a way really reaffirming that the mother's innate forms the embryo and develops the fetus. Is this contradictory from last week? What do you guys think? I'll wait here all day. No, I won't.
I was actually going back and looking at the paragraph before dreams, which is where he starts that thought process. And I'll just real quick read that so that we're clear.
Go ahead.
Many theories have been presented to account for the cause of sleep. Chiropractors add one more: the all-wise provision of innate for the recuperation of the physical. This includes the psychic, the soul, the living vital principle, the bond of union between spirit and body. And then he goes into dreams or involuntary combinations of confusion of ideas.
I'll tell you what my thought is. Where did he get the inspiration for chiropractic? Come on, guys. Give me a break.
In a dream.
That's where that birthing, pardon me?
In a dream.
In a dream, he got the inspiration downloaded. That's how important it is. Him mothering this, creating the embryo and birthing chiropractic. I really feel that's the symbolism of that moment of why he's talking about dreams, how powerful they are. Saved this man's life. I've had dreams very similar to that. Okay. That I probably have saved my life at times. And that's where he's saying how important it is birthing this innate, and innate of the mother forms the embryo and develops the fetus. It to me is symbolic for him. Is he is D.D. Palmer a Freemason? Is he a Mason at this point? No, I always thought he was. It was just
I don't
BJ.
know that I was Dee ever a Mason?
I don't know. Barry, do you think he was? Was he?
I don't think DD ever was.
Okay.
Yeah, BJ's known to be the Mason. And I don't
Because this is cryptic, as you know, when we talk about Freemason stuff that we read about in television,
right,
you
right,
know,
right. There's a lot of similarities. The
a
all
lot
one
of
is the
similarities.
universe, the master plan. When you read this tonight, I thought about DD. You know, DD was injured by trains. DD was injured on, you know, some of the train tracks. That was the mode of transportation back in the day. And actually, DD Palmer had nightmares about being hit by trains.
Is
And
that
and
right?
it makes sense because this was the mode of transportation, and here he is using it in this written text about innate and the embryo.
That's a lot of good background. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that, Barry. I didn't know about with that part with the nightmares. You know, it talks about the man. Anybody else?
What page is this?
498,
498.
497. We're on 98 now. 498.
498.
Cool.
Okay. Um, do not forget, and do not forget for one moment that every physical function of the body is managed by innate through the nervous system. Even nerve sheaths and the walls of blood vessels are covered by a complete network of nerves to facilitate the transportation of sensation, motion, transduction, and circulation. The power of innate, it is the inspiration we get, it's the function we have, the dreams of impending danger, the love for our families. It's everything is within that innate consciousness. Some of the readers will observe that I am rewriting an article I wrote several years ago, which can be found in the Science of Chiropractic. It's Dr. Senzon and I. This is one of the things he mentioned, that he actually goes back and it critiques one of his messages. I think that's very cool. Upstanding gentleman. I wrote several years ago, which can be found in the Science of Chiropractic. I did not sanction its publication, as I had then said. I did not know enough of chiropractic to write such a book of the science, philosophy, and the art of chiropractic as the subject demanded. And I think he's talking about really that 1906 controversy with B.J. Palmer. And we straightened a little bit of that out in our podcast. He's dug out so much really good information. Anybody have any insights or like any clarity?
Mm.
I'm going to move on. Every neuron, one of the countless numbers of units of which the nervous system is composed, is a separate and distinct entity. Those of mobility carry impulses outward. The sensory transport sensations inward. Every vertebrate animal at the beginning of its existence is represented by the ovum or cell. After fertilization, the ovum is carried into the uterus by the actions of the cilia, which line the fallopian tube. Once arriving in the cavity of the womb, it becomes attached as a parasite to the mucous membrane. The villi penetrates deeply into the uterine mucosa like roots in a loose soil. These vascular tufts of hair-like projections on the surface of the ovum, whose function is to absorb nutrients for the embryo from its host. The portion to which it is attached develops into the placenta. Through this channel, nutriment is supplied to the fetus by osmosis. The walls of the blood vessels and the nerve sheaths are encircled with a network of nerve fibers. Landois says that nerves are traced to within 1 to 4 inches of the navel. There is no doubt in my mind that by means of this bond of union, the function of the embryo and fetus are directed through the nerve system of the mother by the intelligence I have seen fit to name innate. Now, that's where he's saying mom's innate is still important. It's not just a baby on its own. And we know if a mother perishes, God forbid, it's very likely that baby goes with it unless, radical action is made. So, he's really saying there's trying to get to the understanding and definition of where does innate begin. It's important for us to learn and take consciousness of that. Anybody have any insights?
He's also saying that the embryo lives as a parasite, and that so in that sense, it's taking stuff from the mother's innate still is in control here, but that goes on from there in the next paragraph. But that's but I think that's the key. The embryo is a parasite, and so clearly what's going on in the mother and the control of that system affects what happens to the child as well.
Absolutely. All right, I'll go to the next one. Innate is the bodybuilder before as well as after birth. Heretofore, it has been supposed that the mother impressed her thoughts upon the fetus, but the facts are educated direct. Let me read that again. I'm just getting. Heretofore, it has been, not often do I have to get a chance to say heretofore in starting off a sentence. Okay. Heretofore, it has been supposed that the mother impressed her thoughts upon the fetus, but the facts are educated, directed, innate. At birth, there's an exchange in the engagement of the physical provisions. The fetus is severed from the mother. Innate, the maintenance, the metamere, served from the mother. Innate, the metamere of universal intelligence, is segmented. Individualized spirit and a somite of matter form a new being. The these are linked together by the soul, a living entity. Educated intelligence looks after its environment in proportion to its development. That was a mouthful. What he's describing is innate. Innate being the segmented portion of universal spirit God, right?
He's talking.
Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, he's talking about the embryo innate being formed through the mother, and there's that connection there. It's being formed, and it's parasite-like. And however, the mother's impression, right, is mostly educated because of her thinking. However, there's that universal connection as well.
And I also took this as birthing. We have our educated, even then, this is the Industrial Revolution. They've already industrialized birth, and forceps were not just invented. They've been around a very long time. And I also see that too, is that you can't intellectualize birth. We've got to honoring birth is what I stand for in life, honoring birth for mom, dad, and baby. So, yeah, that's one way I took it. There's many ways to see these things, right, with our own eyes. Anybody else?
Innate is the bodybuilder before as well as after birth. And then we go to the separation, and where it talks about innate as a part of universal, but the individualized spirit and the somite of the matter of the form of the new being. And so that's then linked together. It's linked, then that innate links with the body of the new being. Right. The mother was supplying to that infant, as we said earlier, but at this point, it joins with the educated that's within the new body and they start to work together.
It's a
Barry, you have something?
it's impressions on this new innate. And if you think about it, this is actually another triune, right? Universal, the embryo, and then mother coming together, making that one.
Yeah.
It's
And then
it's life science and it's basic philosophy of chiropractic.
yeah,
And it's a vascular situation, but it's also a soul situation.
absolutely.
And I believe that it's an inside position, but it's also a transition position.
The spiritual and the material.
Yes, and I believe that when he was plugged into this, he was explaining the cycle of life, but he was also weaving in the fundamentals of chiropractic philosophy for the future of where we stand today.
You know, and that's what makes him so well written. When you read these things, it's why we have to read it and digest it. Just reading it like a novel, you don't take, well, I don't. I need to sit and digest it. Some of it's, you know, it's a lot of meat to chew on. And each one of us is getting something different out of there. That's where we're really looking at philosophy and wisdom.
Well,
That's really wisdom. Go
Didi
ahead.
was on the same philosophical level of a Einstein.
Oh,
Like I believe Didi was one of the most impressionable people in the history of mankind that no one really knows much about.
That
well,
comparison is made in the next couple of pages, actually.
well, you know, that's why we do this. This goes on through the ages. We're making history right now in the moment. This is the 1% of chiropractic right now. And the hundreds of people that listen to this communicate with us all around the world in different time zones, right? How fantastic is that? So, you know, we're touching lives and literally connecting the dots of chiropractic around the planet. Because how many people have read D.D. Palmer's book to page 500? Okay, we're putting it out there, plus all the other things that we've written and read. And you realize this is that book. We're having it, you know, it's audio now. People don't have to sit down and read it like a novel. They can be listening to it and take it in from D.D. Palmer with a little explanation. And then you get your own explanation down the road as well. Are we ready?
I want to just say that the last line is also, I think, integral here. We need to pay attention to the fact it says educated intelligence looks after the environment in proportion to its development. So although it's there at birth, it doesn't know much about what it's trying to do and has to develop. And so innate has more there. It's communicating, but the educated is still a novice.
What he's talking about there, Alan, is he's talking about epigenetics. He's talking about the code of once we do become a thing. What happens when we become a thing? Well, our environment dictates that.
That's right.
Well, you know, I look at the argument of, we don't talk about it much anymore, is the nature nurture. You know, he's talking about nature part of it and the nurturing of what our environment is, right? It's not only how you're born, it's also what you have to deal with. But there's also a part of you that's innately James Chester, right? Yeah, very insightful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Osteological specimens have afforded me much pleasure and edification along this line of thought. While I am writing this article, a specimen of Innate's work is received from Gustavus Notik. Its extreme measurements, and I may have his name completely wrong, I apologize. Its extreme measurements are 1 inch by 1 5/8 in its osseous mending of the right 6th and 7th costocartilages in the form of 2 united furrows of bone. The circumference of the larger of the two is 1 and 2, excuse me, of the two is 2.5 inches. At the smaller is 1.5 inches. The history as read from the specimen before me, that the owner received a costocartilage fracture. I don't know where he's going with this yet, quite honestly. As the cartilage has no internal nerve or blood vessel for the distribution, reception, retention of cartilage or bone-forming corpuscles, the best that innate, the intellectual, which superintends the physical functions during our sleeping and waking hours, could do was to deposit osseous matter between and around the fractured ends of the bone and cartilage, similar to the way in which a blacksmith would mend a wagon tongue which had received a transverse fracture. Now, we know where BJ got his use of commas and no periods. Thank you. That was one breath. Okay. But, you can see it. The welder is in you. The blacksmith is in you. One thing I think about in this, when we talk about the costal cartilage, I think about the subcostal nerves. The nerves that run right under the ribs are big honking nerves. Okay. They're not like the little nerves we have in our fingers and things. These are big old nerves that travel a lot of information. Why? What is the meaning of that? I think it might be a little more transmitter and receiver through that chest. Okay. But why is it wired that way? I think it's absolutely interesting, and nobody's ever answered that. We need to do a research project. Anyway, Dr. Barry Hobbs, what do you have?
So, Haig, while you're reading that and thinking about all the commas and stuff going, where are we going with this? I'm sitting there laughing because he's going 2.5 inches by 1 by this. He's given details, osteological. And if you would think this is BJ Palmer in volume 18 talking about an atlas and the osteological collection he had. However, this is DD. This is our founder. And this is where BJ got this from. And when I heard this, because I don't have the book in front of me, that's where I was going with this. Look, this is our founder. He was detailed in the anatomy and these osteological collections that went on the Smithsonian and other museums. That's how detailed he was. And most of us chiropractors forget that. That's where I was going with this. And then he came in with INNATE, putting the cartilage in and fixing that transverse fracture. Love it. This is our founder.
Yeah, I mean, he was the most learned man in human physiology, absolutely, of the physiology of the vertebral column and brain and spinal cord, very likely, of the time. We know that. He got everything he could at the time to read. All right. The intervening spaces between the ribs and the cartilage are filled with callus. To produce this material, a slight elevation of temperature was necessary. Later, a subnormal degree of heat hardened it. The function involved the changes of temperature were physiological. The fracture and its mending were not pathological, were not departures from the state of health. This repairing of the fracture was done by INNATE, without the knowledge of educated, the man whom he knew as John Doe. Material, you're there for the putty. You're there for the dust to put us together. It's the spirit that holds us together. Barry Hobbs, go ahead.
Oh my God, chiropractors. He used the word health and innate there.
Yeah.
Whoa. And related it to self-healing.
How important is that? Because people say you never talked about that. You know what? It blew right by me. Thank you for that insight of that, because that's very important. This is a point of contention, right? In the whole profession. He does talk about health and how the body heals, and this is part of innate intelligence. Absolutely. A description of
Haig,
yeah.
he goes on for the next page and a half, repeating descriptions there. If you want to read all that, it's all the same kind of stuff about bone changes.
I don't mind.
Basically,
These changes show judgment and skill on the part of innate. I'll just read that part. I'm going to read this one too. This is page 501. The educated knew nothing of this internal work. A chiropractor would have replaced the atlas into its normal position. Innate displays much of the varied intelligence. This is the top of 501. Varied intelligence in the building of osseous abutments and piers in the spinal canal to prevent further displacement of luxated vertebra, one of which is as nice a dovetail as any cabinet maker could have made. You think how beautiful those facets are, the artistry of the carpenter right? I think of Jesus. I think of just amazing craftsmen. I was talking about craftsmen who built my building that I have, where my office used to be, and just the craftsmanship. And he's just talking about it in reverence of the craftsmanship of our body. Okay, now I can skip again. Do you have another part you'd like to skip to?
Well, I'd say after the next paragraph, he says, to say that this displayed intelligence made manifest by innate is nothing but nature, instinct, or intuitive force does not meet my comprehension.
Yeah. Yeah.
The limit, in other words, to limit what innate did here is incomprehensible. That
yeah.
It's not conceivable.
And it's why he always talks about when in the beginning of the adjuster, of how most of us are all talking about chiropractic completely incorrectly. He would be correcting me, and I do my best, okay? But this is where he's getting to why it's just so amazing. It's not a water hose. It's not an engine that's not working right. It's not this. It's not an out of tune instrument. It's so much bigger than that. It's innate intelligence, part and parcel of God, of the material of the earth that's being pulled together to make it into Alan Lichter and Bob Crystal and Carol Crystal. You know, that's how amazing it is. Let's not dumb it down for anybody.
And Haig, he's being specific to one bone, right? A dovetail joint at the Atlas complex. And
where did he say that? He said at the Atlas.
Is that what you guys read?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's to one bone, and a dovetail.
A chiropractor would have replaced the Atlas in its normal position.
That's one bone, not the whole structure, right? He's being very specific.
Yep.
And I like the detail of dovetail, because even in our work as an upper cervical chiropractor, we talk about all the anomalies being at the Atlas. And here he is talking about this because a lot of his students were also MDs going off and practicing, doing spondylotherapy, thinking it was chiropractic because they got the degree anyway, the other part of the history. So he's also identifying and separating the difference there.
And that's very important. And, you know, that's where we have to do what we're doing. Like this weekend, I just did my second time going through Marty Rosen's infant cranial certification. I've done it before. I'm doing it again right now. And, you know, we just had a whole weekend, and I'm teaching a seminar in 2 weeks. And why am I away from my family for doing that? Because it's just so amazing studying these amazing interlocking, interconnected, beyond the comprehension of machinery, right? That can mold and shape itself throughout our lifetime to you know, because our structure determines our function. And so our function determines our structure. And amazing stuff.
You just summed it up there, Haig. It's all adaptation.
It's all adaptation. And the robot does not have the ability to adapt.
The body self-heals, self-regulates, needs nothing extra in it, simply no interference. When you clear the interference, the body heals itself naturally. That's what this is telling us. This is like the precursor to that. Like the body will mend itself.
The body will mend itself when it's given the opportunity and proper material, right?
Or it dies.
And it ceases to function. And that's what we reclaim that energy. We become the birds and the bees and the smelly, nice flowers, right? I'm going to skip to 502 to right at the top of these lines right here, where it says innate intelligence knows much more of function than the medical world will ever know. I had to start there, right? How we still say that. We have done a great deal of research, and that's, you know, on the human body. But do we know more than innate does? We will never. Do you think we'll ever? I think it's impossible to recreate innate intelligence. AI, no matter how much it develops. Listen to me jinxing myself. Is that Will Smith coming in with AI? Whatever. So, but innate intelligence knows much more of function than the medical world will ever know. Dreams of the innate mind more or less mixed with the memories of educated, which produce mental teratogamy.
Teratogeny.
Teratogeny. A lot of big words. There are a lot of fun ones today. We got to look those up. We like to do that if anybody feels like doing that. All parts of the human frame. You have it looked up already?
I got it for you.
Good man. I knew it would happen.
A teratogen is a substance that interferes with normal fetal development and causes congenital disabilities. So
wow.
it's a yeah.
You know, teratogenesis. Now I can say the word. I got to tell you guys another little story. I just wrote a paper. I'm really want to submit it to peer review, and I gave it to Marty Rosen while I was at the meeting, and he just told me that he is on the peer review board for the Asian spine, and he's going to help me, and he has, you know, a group of friends to help me develop it so it is submittable, and but it's pretty close right now, I think. But it's about damage to the upper cervical via birth and trauma early life, the rate of SIDS, and the role of chiropractic in that. Life-saving information. And then, okay, we're editing Save the Babies. That's where my documentary, it's coming out this year. We're going to be debuting part of it at INNATE Newborn Adjusting in Spartanburg, South Carolina, February 1st, 2025. And so we're going to be premiering it, and then with a full-length features coming out. So I'm really excited that we're also looking for producers, people that want to get involved, because it takes money to do this, and we need it. So that's my shameless plug for that for the moment. And I'm going to continue to read. All right. All parts of the human frame which support and hold the nervous system in position should be properly situated. Likewise, should the nerves which superintended all function, instead of removing diseased organs, would it not be better to replace any displaced bones which press against, impinged upon the nerve fibers which conduct nerve impulses? Okay, have you ever had a patient that you know you could help them, they were gung-ho about it, the next day they schedule a surgery? I mean, it just happened to me. Guy disappeared, haven't seen him, and then, oh, you know, my jugular, the subclavian artery was hitting my T1, so they removed it. And I said, you know, man, I mean, we could have adjusted you more than once and probably gotten that much better without having to nearly cripple your spine at 35 years old. That T1 first rib is a honking rib. That has a lot of structural support up there. God didn't make a mistake in engineering, okay? Anyway, what do you guys think? Dead air. So, chiropractic is a there's a big ink spot in the middle of this word on mine. Chiropractic is a philosophical science. It has solved one of the most profound and perplexing problems of the age, namely, what is life? Okay. D.D. Palmer, he's saying these types of things over and over again in many ways, from 1914 book and this one up to page 500. And he's talking about, listen, we're talking about bigger than a kink in a hose. We're talking about connection from material to spirit to God. You know, this is a three-way highway, and it runs back and forth in harmony. What is life? Once we get away from this educated, I mean, if you would all agree, most of B.J. Palmer's books, besides the science, was really how to get out of our educated way and allow us to express our innate intelligence, from putting our innate pad next to our beds and writing, just like the cat like there does, live innately, And we have our innate pads because we get those flashes of thought just before wake or just before sleep. You know, that's when we're most in that, what is that, theta waves. So, you know, he was telling us these things. BJ told us these things. We've got to get out of our own way. I want to plug Simon Senzon's book again, because the spiritual writings of BJ Palmer, I think we need to review that all at some point and doing that one as well, because that's a good one. I don't have it yet. I need it. I need all 23, 4, 5 books he's written. Amazing guy. I mean, I'm enamored. You know, I've got these chiro crushes on so many chiropractors now. You know, we've had a great time with amazing chiropractors, and you guys are all not, you're one portion of them, but you're all the favorites of all. Absolutely. We've got Carol, our honorary PhD, who's also a master's in chemistry. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, Robert Crystal, I mean, you're second generation chiropractor. Is that right? And now we have a third generation in your office. Barry Hobbs, the master with Dee toggling his atlas right behind him. I need some wallpaper like that. Alan Lichter, the bearded wonder, Dee in disguise. Okay. You know, I think he gets younger every week on here, quite honestly, just because his beard gets longer. And we have James Chester, the one and only, and I miss him. I'm so happy to see him. Last time I saw you was in Colorado. We got to break bread together. And I remember I was so happy I got to eat elk. It was awesome. That beautiful restaurant in the Springs, man. It was fabulous. We got to do it again for sure. So I feel blessed in this evening of sharing chiropractic. This is where we're going to stop. Okay. And we're going to pick up right there where those quotes are, and get to the special announcement. I got to remember what that special announcement is on 503. We might start there. So we're going through a journey. We're halfway through, and it's taken us years to do this, but we do it in chunks. We don't do it all straight through, because sometimes you need a rest. I don't think we're at that point yet. What do you guys feel?
I'm good with this.
I think we keep going, right? We're in good shape right now. One of the things I'm thinking about too is getting to these other books these are about Dee Palmer, not from Dee Palmer. This one is Anything Could Cause Anything. William David Harper, he was the president at Texas Chiropractic, and wrote this about Dee. This is a third edition, 1976. So this came out while he was still alive. I gotta cherish this book. So we can go in a couple of different directions later on, but I think we're keep plugging through this. It's amazing listening to. Well, I've been listening to my own voice. We got a few other readers here coming too. So anybody have any insights or anything like to share before we close out tonight?
If anybody wants this book on a PDF format, you can send me your email and I can add you to it. It's in my Dropbox, so anybody can have access to this.
That's fantastic. And, we have sent it out to, we're in the process of translating it to Spanish to make sure it's in Portuguese as well. And because it's such an important book. Thank you for that, James Chester. And Chiro Hustle. Is it chirohustle.com?
Got it. Yep.
Excellent. We really appreciate it. I feel blessed in every way. I'm excited. I've been with chiropractors all day long, and I feel like I'm home every day I'm on here with you guys. Anybody have anything else, or we have a good night? Hey, everyone on the podcast listening or on the podcast now, you just show up February 1st and get in free. I'm also donating my 7-foot-tall BJ and Dee Palmer to Sherman College, and I'm driving the spine truck up there to do it. So we're just going to come rolling and have some fun and do it good old innate style, all right? God bless you guys. Have a gorgeous night. Arrivederci, and we'll see you next week. I love you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.